very strong sun in this spot right now. I promise we're going to go, our project today, we're going to go back where there's a little bit less glare, but I wanted to show you this pot. This is one in my QVC collection. It is one of my garden urns. It's a faux concrete urn, and you can see that it is pretty pale. It hasn't aged yet. It does have a certain concrete look to it, but it hasn't been around long enough to age and get dirty and get what I call mucked up. Which leads me to my question of the day. Do you guys like your pots in a more pristine state like this, or do you like them when they're kind of dirty and mossy and moldy and mucked up? I definitely fall in the latter category, and that's what we're going to address today. So let's go to the back, take a look at some pots and how we can get that effect on our new planters. But before we start creating that patina and that look on our new pots, let's first do a little bit of research. So what I like to do is look at my real concrete and terracotta pots first that have been in situ in place for a while, so that they've already started to age and get that veneer that I like so much, so that I can then have that in my memory banks when I get ready to try to recreate that same effect. So here is a good example. So this is a concrete urn that I bought at an estate sale. It is, I mean, it is very, very, very heavy. And you can see that it's been in place for a while. It's aged over time. You can see this pretty dramatic contrast between what's kind of a black moldy look and just the gray of the concrete. Down here it's got a little bit more of a muddy sheen to it, and depending on where you have it in the garden, it will age accordingly. So this one is real concrete, and it looks, I think, very, very beautiful. Now, next to it is one that is a faux stone. This is actually a large version of the smaller version that's in my QVC line, and this one I aged myself. It used to be just that white faux concrete, and what I did was just replicate the patina that was on this one. So side by side, I think it would be very difficult to tell which was real and which was Memorex. Stuart, would you have been able to tell, or would I have fooled you that this one was concrete? Okay, so that's one example. I'm getting ready to repot this with something else. Now here's another example over here. Here is a real concrete pot, and you can see based on where it's been in the garden that it has aged some, it's got some of that, that black kind of moldy look. It has darkened, but what it has developed is this wonderful moldy green around the base. This is a pot that does have good drainage, and I say never waste any good garden muck. So whenever my gloves are dirty, I always rub them across a pot that may look a little bit too white and a little bit too clean to me. Because again, I think the more aged they look, the more expensive they look. So this is a concrete pot. Now, some of you may recognize this one. This is a faux concrete pot that if you bought it off of my QVC line right now, and I'm not sure it's in stock, I think some of the terracotta versions of this are in stock, it would have a very nice faux concrete look, but that would be very clean. This one, because I wanted it to blend in and kind of sort of match the other aged concrete versions in my garden, which, by the way, you guys, I think makes your garden look a little less cluttered. They don't have to all be identical, but I like them to speak the same language. So if I had a dirty, real concrete pot that had aged in place against just the very white faux concrete of the one in my line, that wouldn't please me so much. So it's really a subjective thing. Some of you might like them clean and more modern looking and not too dirty. I tend to like things mucked up. And so what I did was I just looked to see where some of that black and green fell in the relief of the different adornments and decorations on the pot around the rim. And then what I did was I just replicated that same look. So this looks very aged. I think I fooled you, didn't I, Stuart? This one I think looked really, really aged. So I've got two terracotta pots. These are the English urns. They're available on QVC. We'll put a card up so you can order them. And if they're out of stock, hopefully they'll be back in stock. But I want to show you my precious dog Goose, who's still here with me today. And she's over here just hanging out in the shade, aren't you, Goose? She's such a good helper. She's such good company. But here is an example of how I have already aged this pot right here. This was this clean and kind of pristine looking. It had a certain sheen to it. I believe this one is still available on QVC, the Linda Vater Home Collection. I believe it is, and we will put a link. As I said, you can just click above. In fact, all links, by the way, if you can't find the link, if you look in the upper right corner of the screen, you'll see a little eyeball. If you click on that, all links that we refer to will open up for you there. So this one I have already done, and you can see it looks considerably more aged than this one. You can see it looks as if some moss has already started to develop around this medallion and around the edges. It looks like it's been in place for a while, and this is the look that I want to recreate. Now, here is, and this is faux terracotta. This is a real terracotta pot, which is a baby version that's in my garden. And you can see it hasn't aged a lot, but it has already started to develop kind of a mossy green. So in my research, I'm just looking to see how pots kind of age in place so that as I put my own veneer on them, I am as closely as possible replicating the effects that would have been created if Mother Nature aged them. So here's how I begin. You guys are gonna think, first of all, I am not meticulous in any way about this. And in fact, I have found the less meticulous I am, the better they end up looking. So don't feel as if you need to rush to your craft store, rush to Lowe's or Home Depot and get all sorts of materials. A lot of times I will just look at what I've got in my garage and the dregs of whatever spray paint cans are in there, anything of that nature. It could be chalk paint. And in my world, most things are kind of in black, white, green, or gray. And so typically they're one of those tones. And I use the dregs of whatever I still have there. But I start out with a really good underlayer of just good old garden muck. And this is one of the funnest things you can do. So what I typically do is I just get a pair of not really valuable garden gloves. Doesn't really matter, but I'm going to get these dirty, and then I typically save them and I use them for these kinds of products. Now, I just told Stuart and I were putting some of this magic solution into this container, and I said, be careful not to spill it on you. He said, why does it smell or anything? Will it make him look like the Incredible Hulk because it's kind of green? I said, no, I don't think so, but it might make you stink maybe just a little bit. So I've got this here. Now, this is the really difficult part, you guys. What this is just some kind of moldy water that has pollen in it that blew in it, that has, just basically some algae, things of that nature, that was just in a pot that was left out and in the rain. But what this has is lots of spores. It's of both algae and moss and mold, and then there's just dirt in here. So what I do is I just take my gloves, and sometimes if I don't have something this fancy, I will just literally, like I say, I'm not very meticulous about this. I just take mud out of the garden with wet garden gloves. And don't ever let good garden muck go to waste. I think that might be on my gardening manifesto. And by the way, if you guys don't get my newsletter, go to lindavater.com and sign up. So I start this way. just by getting a layer of dirt on it. And immediately it starts browning up and looking more aged. And sometimes I will take my fingers and really get into those crevices. I actually need, this is a little bit too watered down, so I'm going to come over here, get some good old Oklahoma dirt and clay, and I am just going to rub it on there. The beauty of this, you guys, you cannot do it wrong. There is no way you can mess this up. I promise. So this would be a fun thing for your kids to do with you. My boys used to help me with this when they were little. They had a grand old time. Sometimes what I will also do, and a lot of times if it looks like you're getting too many, like that looks too liney, you can just kind of go like this, pat it, and it will look a little bit more mottled. Sometimes what I will do, if I have any old green paint, like I've got some really old, and again, it doesn't matter if it's thick, it doesn't matter if it's thin, it just doesn't matter. So I will take some of this paint. This is probably called moss or sage or some such. Sometimes I'll pour it into the water directly. Sometimes I'll just put it on my muddy gloves. And I just start doing this all the way around. And I make sure that I really try to get it. I'm gonna have to stand up, Stuart, and get on this side so I can see a little bit better. And see how by just using my fingers, I can really get into those cracks and crevices. And some of it will be filled in when I'm finished, and some of it won't. Every pot will be individual. And by the way, you guys, this separates, and I am not separating it for this demonstration, but you certainly could. Now, I've got this on here. I'll take the back of my glove and kind of do that a little bit so it looks a little bit more natural. You can also use a dry sponge. You could use a dry foam brush. There's all sorts of things you could use, okay? Now, this is kind of a wondrous thing, you guys. So at this point, it looks like this. Again, there's no wrong way to do it. But this is where you get this kind of black moldy look. And I'm just taking, this is black matte paint. This is just the dregs of a can. And I am just giving it a whisper. Just a whisper, which is why sometimes it's good to use the dregs. If you run out of this one, get another can. Doesn't even matter if it does this splattery thing, because what you're going to do is just kind of work it in. And remember, it especially looks good when you wipe it and some of it stays in place and some of it's removed, because if you'll recall from the sample pots that I showed you that were real, how they aged in a very contrasting way. So it had this perfect kind of modeling look and that kind of contrast. See how that's looking like it's already naturally aged? Stuart, you can even see that, can't you? Okay. And this is the same technique, you guys, that I did on the concrete pots. When it does this kind of stippled look where I didn't shake the can enough, that's perfect, because that shows texture in the pot and actually makes the pot look more textured than it really is. Want to make sure that this medallion, because this is where Mother Nature would definitely put her colors, because they would fall into the dirt and mold and moss would fall into the bas-relief of this planter. So I'm going to do that to this side. It doesn't matter if you get too much, if you get too little, because remember, these aren't supposed to be perfectly uniform. Every pot will age differently and in a very distinctive way. It's a great way to use whatever paint you have in your garage. You could do this, I've done it before on plastic pots. It's a way that you can age them. But even really good quality pots like those in my QVC collection, I want them to age too, and I don't want to wait for Mother Nature to do it. I sometimes demand instant gratification. Now, here is another. You'll notice that on some concrete pots too, it may have also almost like a lavender color to it. Okay, now this is really sophisticated, you guys. This is just a green sample that I bought at the sample counter at Lowe's, but it's kind of that mossy green that I like. And actually, I added just a little bit of dirt to it. And I'm gonna put that on my glove. And then, do you recall, Stuart, how that one pot kind of greened up at the bottom? So, we're gonna put this. And isn't this going fast, Stuart? And you don't have to be, you don't have to measure. You don't have to be exacting about it. It's just observation and play. Observation and play. And I just love that. And like I say, a perfect thing for you to do with your kiddos. They can definitely help you with this. They may wonder why you're taking something clean and making it dirty, but you can explain that that is your garden aesthetic and you like things that are aged and have a patina to them. Okay, so Stuart, you want to come around to the front? Tell me if you see any place I've missed. Now, again, how do you know when you're finished? You know you're finished when you run out of time. And so that this isn't too long, I won't go on and on. But if I wanted to add more green, if I wanted to add more to this one, I could. And then the lovely thing about this, you guys, is they will continue to age just like you and I, getting more beautiful with every passing hour. So there you go. This is how you age a beautiful pot, specifically this one from my QVC Linda Vater collection. And here's another thought while I'm thinking about it. You can do the same thing to the baskets that are in my Linda Vater home collection. They take to this process very, very well if you want them to look aged and old and even more realistic. So I also know that some of you are going to want to know what these plants are. This is what I call one of the boxwood doppelgangers. This is teucrium or germander, and I've got 2 of these pots. This takes to tight clipping very, very well. So as a boxwood alternative, it's really wonderful. And I love the elegant simplicity of this display. Well, Stuart and I both just kind of did a cry of sadness because he said, so do you want to do this last epilogue with Goose before she goes home? And we both were just so sad because, again, she is my best accessory. So if you're still hanging in here for this fashion epilogue, here we go. If not, just move on to the next one. So today, my sunglasses are Cole Haan, And I got these, I think, at Nordstrom Rack many, many years ago. My earrings, oh, these earrings are fun. I got these at a Frank Lloyd Wright museum in Buffalo, New York. I think they're kind of fun. My shirt is Merona. I have a whole collection of denim shirts. I especially like sleeveless ones because I think that they are great to wear under blazers and things like blazers and sweaters where it gets a little bit too bulky. This is Merona. My belt is Nordstrom Rack. My shorts are Old as the Hills, don't know where they came from. My boots are Merry People boots. I love these. These are a little bit pricier, you guys, but they are worth every penny because they've got thick soles. I can actually work in them. Plus, I think they are just cute as can be. They look cute with black leggings, fun with skirts. I wear them in the wintertime. And let's see, I think my garden gloves today that I'm going to get very, very dirty, I think are probably from the dollar store or something. So there you go. There's my fashion ensemble for today.